Started. Good afternoon, everyone. Morning, everyone. If I haven't met you already, my name is Rick Page. I'm so pleased to be here and welcoming you to really a signature event from our Research Celebration Week. This is the 9th annual Stetson Lecture in Technological Advances in Medicine. And we're so pleased that you all are here. This is an opportunity today and this week to highlight the research that goes on at the Larner College of Medicine. This includes from students, both medical and graduate students, our trainees, our faculty, and our staff are engaged in research throughout our community. During this week, those of you who've been able to join us, we started with poster presentations. We had our distinguished alumni lecturer, Jennifer Musa, who got her Ph.D. in anatomy and neurobiology in 1994, and her lecture was absolutely inspirational, talking about the science of service and her efforts to really change the world and a little part of the world in Haiti. Now, we've continued on with research rally, with awards, and we get to really the culmination of this week, and that is the Stetson Lecture. This would not be possible without the generous support of College of Medicine alumnus John Stetson, a member of the class of UVM from 1956, and the College of Medicine, not yet Larner, from 1960, and his wife, Bobby Stetson, a graduate of UVM class of 1957. I'm so glad that Jack and Bobby and your wonderful family are here today, and friends, I should say, for yet another Stetson Lecture. I look forward to this day every year, and it's kind of like old home week having you here. And it's really kind of extra special because today, it's not today, but today we're acknowledging Jack Stetson's 90th birthday last week. Congratulations, Jack. With medical science as it's going, we look forward to the next 90 years, Jack. So can't wait to witness the things that happen, and I'll be right there with you. Let me tell you a little bit about Jack and Bobby, for whom this lecture is named. They were Rutland residents, and Dr. Stetson was a UVM Wilbur Fund scholarship recipient. He had a 39-year career as an orthopedic surgeon. And just imagine all the advances that he saw during his career. Now, Bobby graduated from the UVM College of Arts and Sciences, and she's a gifted artist. So what an amazing couple. When they established this series in 2016, we have this quote from Dr. Stetson: "Medicine has gone from the horse and buggy of my grandfather to a supersonic technological revolution that is globally limitless." And that was 2016, and 8 years later, that couldn't be more true. We're also fortunate to have in our audience our very first Stetson lecturer, John Abley. So good to have you back here, John. He's a co-founder of Boston Scientific. In an earlier life, I used to put in their pacemakers, and they worked beautifully. We're so glad to have you back for yet another Stetson Lecture, John. Now, every day here at the Larner College of Medicine, I get inspired by the missions that we undertake. We educate medical students and train them. We educate and train doctoral students and other graduate students. We're involved in clinical care at the highest level, where our research complements the clinical care and the education along with our community service. And our commitment to research is unflagging. As a matter of fact, it only increases. This last summer, we had 70 of 124 first to going on to second year medical students take the only summer vacation they get during medical school to do research. And thanks to philanthropy, we've never said no to a student wanting to become scientists potentially and do research. So guided by our commitment to professionalism, to treating everyone with cultural humility, kindness, and respect, we merge these missions to allow us to take care of our community, to take care of the state, really the world in terms of clinical care, education, and research. So again, to the Stetson family, we're so grateful that you allow us to have this exchange of information and really get together as a community to celebrate, again, during this research week, the advances in medicine thanks to your generosity. Thank you again to the Stetson family. So we're very fortunate today to have a special speaker, Dr. Johannes Fruehauf. Was I close that time, Johannes? We've been working on this, and there are sounds in German that I don't know how to make, but I'm trying. He's a physician scientist, life science entrepreneur, author, and an inventor who's going to give today's lecture. And to properly introduce him and perhaps pronounce his name better than I'd like to introduce Dean Kate Tracy. Please join me in welcoming Kate Tracy.
Nice setup. I took French and a little bit of Spanish, so I'm not sure I'm going to improve upon Rick's pronunciation. But welcome everyone to the Stetson Lecture and our capstone event for the Research Celebration Week. It's been a phenomenal week, and it's such a thrill to look out and see such wonderful attendance at this event. It's my pleasure right now to introduce the Stetson speaker, Dr. Johannes Fruehauf, founder and CEO of BioLabs and Lab Central, the national network for biotech incubators and the largest co-working spaces for life science startups. Together, BioLabs and Lab Central have helped launch over 850 venture-funded startup companies in the life sciences in 16 different cities and a presence in the US, Germany, France, and Japan. The concept of these facilities is built around openness, transparency, and shared resources, and has changed the way biotech companies are built in the US. Companies launched at BioLabs Lab Central have raised over $30 billion, with a B, dollars in venture capital financing since 2010. Dr. Fruehauf is a founding general partner at Mission BioCapital, an early-stage venture capital fund providing capital to startup companies in the life sciences. He studied medicine in Germany and France and practiced medicine, both internal and OBGYN, for several years in Germany before coming to Boston for a postdoctoral fellowship at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, Harvard Medical School in Boston. He is author of 30 peer-reviewed publications in the medical literature and inventor of numerous issued and pending patents. Please join me in welcoming Johannes Fruehauf, who will be speaking on innovation, entrepreneurship, a strategic blueprint to academic startup success. Johannes?
Thank you, Kate and Rick Page, Dean Page, for your warm welcome. And thank you to the Stetson family for allowing me to speak at this event. Thank you also, John, for being here. We've had a good mind share on other topics before, so I'm excited to share with you our ideas today about how to blend innovation and entrepreneurship and how universities play such an important role in that. It was interesting to hear from Rick Page that I know his nephew, because his nephew is a medical student in Rhode Island and an entrepreneur, and he started a company in one of our labs. So you see, this is a small world type of thing, and the history of that startup company and their trajectory can be sort of emblematic for much of the things we do. And you will hear in this lecture also the beginnings of a collaboration that we will announce between UVM and BioLabs, where we will bring some of our learnings to Burlington. And we are super excited about that, and we hope that we will meet everybody's expectations with this. So let's get started. My whole topic is life sciences, innovation, and translation. And my interest is mostly around doing this through startups. And that is a daunting activity that needs many people to help. And we will talk a little bit about the different stakeholders in that journey. And to get me oriented, I'd like to understand a little bit my audience today. Most of you, I assume, are academics with UVM. Is there, who would self-define as an academic researcher or an academic in the larger sense? Who would self-define as an industry person or not an academic, if you just contrast it? There's a good number there as well. Are there any students in the audience? Welcome, students. You are the ones that we hope to help mostly, because we can bring to you this new thinking of, okay, there's not just basic research happening at universities, but also getting you ready for the journey to take these ideas outside. Outside of the academic walls. We've been working in this field now for 15, 20 years. And there are some learnings that always come back that I've highlighted on this slide. I don't know how to point to the slide and not turn my back to you. So we call this elements or building blocks of a functional innovation ecosystem. And again, with the intent to create an environment where the creation of startups out of academic ideas is made as easy as possible. And we remove the obstacles for people in this process. It all starts with academic excellence in basic research. And it's so fitting that we are doing this at the end of your Excellence in Research Week. So thank you for the timing. It couldn't be better than that. So I grant you that we have that in Burlington. Now there are many, that alone does not make successful startup ecosystem. There are many other elements that need to be included. And we want to talk about some of them today, not all, but some of them. One area right here, knowledgeable venture capital. Who knows what venture capital is? Most of you do. That's amazing. When I came to Boston for my postdoc 20-some years ago, I did not know what venture capital was. And I was a grown-up physician, had my own group at the university in Heidelberg, and I did not know what venture capital was. So good on you that you're a step ahead of me. And it's very important to understand how venture's role interfaces in this play. But venture alone doesn't make a successful biotech startup ecosystem either. We need supportive technology transfer practices. We need a tech transfer office or a tech licensing office that gets it, that's supportive of this. We have a few slides to that topic, and that often, I speak a lot with governments and people who develop like large-scale strategy in this topic. And if they ask me for sort of the single most valuable intervention they can make, it's mostly tech transfer. Because unfortunately, that office in many cases becomes a bottleneck for the liberation of ideas, for the making available of ideas to the outside world. We would like the tech transfer office to be super supportive of the idea of spinning academic findings out and making them available to the world. And sometimes that doesn't live up to its expectations. So investing in technology transfer, having very capable people there, having best practices there is a good investment for any university to make. Diverse talent base, of course, we will talk about how taking a project from idea to product requires so many different skills in sequence. Yes, it requires the initial genius, inventor, or discovery that happens in academia. But after that, there are many other steps that have to go right. And they are oftentimes much more boring than the initial discovery. But you need those skills at the right time, close by. And so it's a big part of what we try to do with our ecosystems and with our communities to bring those players together and have the projects benefit from the input from these numerous people at the right time. We also talk about a supportive environment. Here again, it's great, and I'm grateful for the whole university leadership to have invited me to talk about this. It speaks about the buy-in that this topic has from top university leadership. I do often encounter other attitudes and culture at universities where engaging in spin-out or industry activities is often seen as somehow dilutive of the purity of the academic mission. And that shouldn't be the case. That at least that's my viewpoint, and I'm grateful for the top level support that we have for this. Space and lab functionality, we'll talk about how we solve for that, and industry support is another very important component because ultimately these products will not hit the world and will not be scalable if there's not large industry buy-in. This is me. I was asked to give sort of a little bit of a background on who am I. I'm a founder and CEO of a company called Biolabs and its sister company Lab Central. They do essentially the same thing. We provide environments for startup entrepreneurs in many of the key cities and academic centers to help them take their ideas to the next level. We do that with physical infrastructure, but most of all, we do that with community and ecosystem building. I've been in this field now for 15, 20 years. I'm trained as a physician and had some field work in Africa, which I think every doctor should work in these underprivileged health environments to see what it's really about. I also have 3 boys, 1 at medical school. I have 2 dogs and a cat and a busy house at home. So here's our agenda for the talk today. A quick introduction into what Biolabs is and how it works. A brief touch on why translation and what is translation and why do we care, why should we care about it. Role of tech transfer offices, and then eventually how we plan on applying this model here in Burlington. So here are the organizations that I have either co-founded or run. And these are all organizations that work to support startups and that work to support academics who are venturing out to take their ideas forward. On the left, we have the Biolabs organizations and Lab Central, which is sort of our non-profit spin-off, but it's run by the same team. We provide these environments with fully equipped labs. You come into a lab that has everything. That has a pipette, that has a centrifuge, that has all the BSL-2 permits, that has all the fire permits. So the scientists don't have to think about the somewhat boring operational stuff that goes into running the infrastructure. They can really focus on the one thing they care about and they're really good at, which is doing the science. And that saves them a lot of time and money in the process. I'm also a partner and a founder of a venture capital firm. I'm glad that you understand what that is. Those are the people who provide the needed capital for these highly risky endeavors that are startups. We've been doing this now for 8 years. We're investing out of 5 funds so far, mostly in the United States. But now that we have labs going in other geographies, also in Europe and in Asia, we will slowly expand our investment focus also to these areas. The secret sauce on our venture investing is that we get to know these founders really well. They live in our labs, they build their companies in our labs. So typically when you're an investor or a VC, you get them to show up, they pitch you, they show you a highly rehearsed presentation, and they show themselves from their best looking side, like I do to you today. And you don't know what's real. When they work in my labs, though, for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, I see them every day. I see how they treat their teams. I see how they show up. I see if they care about their project really. Do they work on weekends? Don't they? How do they attract talent and capital? And so it's an amazing insight into their behavior and into their character. And if you invest in early stage companies, you will want to know that because the company often doesn't have much yet. It's really about the team and their decision making, their integrity. That is such an important component, especially in the early stages of investing. So that's sort of our secret sauce on the mission side. Here's the example of how we've built Lab Central, and it was built as a public-private partnership. This is now the blueprint for us that we use to inform many local governments, geographic leaders, sometimes university leaders, on how this can be set up as an infrastructure that is sort of a public investment in research infrastructure. I often equate this with the building of a railway station. If you're the mayor of a small town, think of the Wild West, right? Everything is moving west, and maybe you have this group of people, they are farmers, they are makers of some maybe furniture or something. Now the railroad comes through your town. You would want to have them stop there so that your citizens can put their goods on the railroad and have more commerce. But then who's going to pay for the building of the railroad, right? Is it the individual carpenter? Is it the individual butcher? No, it has to be the town. It has to be sort of a communal investment in building that infrastructure. Who builds our highways? It's not me who builds the highway. It's not you who builds the highway. It's all of us. Why? Because it accelerates commerce and it's good for everybody. In a way, this infrastructure needs to be a public investment because ultimately it leads to enormous economic opportunity and development that everybody is going to benefit from. I was able to use similar language to convince our local government in Massachusetts under the leadership then of Deval Patrick to invest in this idea and build this nonprofit entity called Lab Central out of a partnership with us who had previously piloted that at smaller scale in a private setting. We brought in a lot of industry sponsors, and you will see more of that, and other nonprofit leaders to create this common resource. And it has since created a lot of economic benefit and a lot of innovation through the startups that it enables. We have a number of economic highlights here. Thousands of new jobs were created in Massachusetts after they invested in this resource. Amazing number of venture dollars have been raised by the companies enabled there. For me, as a physician, the most rewarding number really is the clinical output. We now know that more than 15,000 patients have been dosed in clinical trials that are testing the drugs invented in our labs. That's a big deal. That means eventually we'll have drugs invented in our labs that get approved and that will serve patients all over the world. It's just a matter of time. Here is a list of our industry partners. So a big part of what we've learned is that you can't do this alone. Even the inventor and the investors can't do this alone. They ultimately need to collaborate very closely with, in our case, mostly pharmaceutical companies. The pharmaceutical companies are interested in this because the reality is that most of the new drugs that get approved today, about 70 to 75% of the new drugs that get approved are not invented at the big pharma companies. They are brought in at some stage of development through licensing, through acquisition, through a collaboration of some sort. And that's what they call external innovation. Many of the pharma companies are now investing big time in external innovation, and we help them get a window into this distributed world that happens at every university with numerous projects. They couldn't possibly keep up themselves. And so that's why they engage with us. They pay us real money for a selective window into this. And it translates oftentimes in interaction and collaboration between our startups and large industry sponsors, either through direct investments that they make through their corporate venture capital firms or through mergers and acquisitions, through buying the company, or through collaborations and licensing agreements. Here's a process of how we select companies to become part of our community. Early on, we decided that it's not helpful for us to be just a home for anybody. We focused on helping good companies, the strongest companies, get even better. And that was a deliberate choice at the very beginning. It has paid off really nicely, because you could spend all of your life trying to make bad companies somewhat acceptable or mediocre companies a little bit better. But we decided early on to just be very selective and focus on the best companies starting in Boston, on the best companies in Boston, and give them the most supportive environment and make them awesome. And why is that good? That's good because now, back to the pharma who we saw here, now they know that it's worth their while coming to our places, because the people that they're going to meet there are pre-selected and it's worth spending time with them. It's also good because it's sort of a self-improving reputation. The people who get admitted, they're super proud of being admitted. They will always say, like, this is the best place in the world because they got admitted, right? It's sort of like UVM or Harvard or something, right? Like, you will not talk badly about your own college. Or this nightclub that has a big bouncer at the door and you're happy if you get in. And so that's sort of how it works to self-reinforce, and it leads to a very collegial internal interaction between the different companies that are in our places. So they have to go through this multi-step application where each company has to pitch us live, and it allows us to get a good sense of them. It allows us to see what they promise at baseline and then also have a longitudinal view how they're executing against that. We ask, sort of, it's an open format presentation, 30 minutes, but we really want to learn about 4 things. One, what is the nature of the science that they're working on, right? It needs to be novel, it needs to be somehow important. 2, do they have a business plan? We do not want to compete with the medical college. We do not want to compete with the universities or research institutions. It's not we are not a place where they should focus on basic discovery. We are a place of where they should take the discovery and make a thing out of it. So we want to see a business plan. 3, who's on the team? What have they done before? What are their credentials? How do we believe, why should we believe that this team will execute the business plan? And do they know what help they need? And 4, have they raised any money? Can they afford to be in our space? It's not cheap to be in our space. Also, if you're able to convince an external investor of your idea, it's probably got some legs. If it's only you and your rich uncle who put money into this thing, maybe it's not quite there yet. So that's our process of accepting companies. Our model, I mentioned this in passing, is one where we have pre-built the lab infrastructure for people. So now the startup that has maybe a small grant or a seed fund or an angel investor round, they don't have to use their precious first money to build out the laboratory environment. The value that startups have is always only in data. It's never in the boxes that they own or in the things that they have purchased. It's always only in data that validates their ideas. So we wanted to change their focus away from owning things and spending precious early dollars on hardware and boxes to focusing on spending that money to create data and to create value for their company. And so that's what this does. We avoid a time-intensive and capital-intensive startup building phase, and we bring that down to a number of days and very small money. That's sort of now a rent that you pay rather than a large capital expense. My own experience in this field was when I built a first biotech company after my postdoc, or out of my postdoc project. And my boss at the time, supervisor at Harvard, sent me out and said, go find lab space. All right? So I go out, find lab space. What do I know about lab space? I knew nothing about lab space. I knew nothing about commercial leases, knew nothing about build-outs. So I spent months learning about a new field. You can figure this out. Our scientists are smart. They can typically solve all these problems. But it's not good use of their time, right? And then it takes months and millions of dollars to get ready before you can generate the first data. And ultimately, only the data is whatever counts. So we've changed that paradigm. This is our current network of facilities. We started in Boston. Now there's a dot in Burlington. We'll talk about that. We're a little premature, but we'll talk about that today. We have labs in many cities now that are mostly overlapping with those centers that garner the largest amount of NIH research support, because that correlates pretty well with patents filed, with papers published, and ultimately with the potential for game-changing innovation. We've also opened the first lab in Tokyo, and there's more to come. And most recently, I'm also very excited to grow this concept in Europe, where our help is really needed. They have excellent science and no idea about translation. And every successful entrepreneur in Europe gets double credit from me because they are working against even harder obstacles than they do here, and we want to help change that. These are the current numbers. In fact, Kate, when they sent you those, we have recently updated them. It's now 1,200 companies. But I've talked about this side already. This is the most important side, because we are not doing this not really doing this for the job creation. Many of the politicians support us because they want to see job creation. We do this because of the medical innovation that comes, that we are enabling in our labs. And this is the number that really counts for us. And I'm hoping that very soon I can add some names of an approved drug to my slide that will have been invented in our labs. So what is translation and why do we care? What do we define as translation? Translation is the taking out from academia of ideas and bringing them in the real world. Why is that? Why do we care about that? Well, it's an economic driver. If we have robust translation of academic ideas in Burlington, these startups will employ people who may not otherwise have these types of jobs here, right? So there's a real economic rationale behind this. It creates opportunities for students and faculty. If we have UVM known as a place where you find a supportive environment for the translation of your ideas, it will help you to attract a different type of faculty. It will help you to attract a different type of student who is also looking for that as a supplement to their basic training in science. And then, of course, access for patients. We benefit in this country from one of the most advanced healthcare systems. And if you fall ill here, you will have access to really good medical treatment and drugs and devices. That's not the same in every other country, and we should be grateful for it. And we need to acknowledge that it's expensive to do this. We need to keep investing in this sector because it benefits all of us. I'm hoping that this is not news to you, the university brass. I'm talking to you. The traditional self-image of the medical school and the university includes these three missions on the left, right? Research, teaching, patient care. And that's great. That's how I grew up in medical school in Germany. I'm strongly advocating to add this fourth pillar to the self-image of any medical school and university, and to embrace the responsibility to make the ideas that your students and your faculty have available to the world and to patients. So thank you for bringing me here. It shows that there's awareness. It shows that there's the willingness to add this. Role of tech transfer offices. So the process of tech transfer is, so what is a tech transfer office? Let's start at the beginning. The inventions that any student or any faculty member would make while they are employed at UVM belong to the university. Now, the tech transfer office typically manages that ownership. They file patents. They pay for the patent fee. They would try to find industry who might be able or willing to buy that patent, right? And so that's a source of revenue for the university. And oftentimes, Traditionally, tech transfer offices used to mostly work with large industry who would license new ideas that are coming out of the labs. The creation of startups requires more hands-on work from the tech transfer office. It requires informing the faculty about the process of invention disclosure so that the that the idea can still be patented. As you know, or maybe you don't, or let's talk about it. If you go out and you speak at the American College of Cardiologists about your idea before you patent it, it's gone. You can no longer patent it, right? And so that is important for the tech transfer office to guide their faculty in that knowledge, and then also to help accelerate that. Because like if I'm a young career professional, I'm a postdoc, I'm an associate professor, I'm an assistant professor, I want to get my publication out, I have urgency, and it takes them forever to file the patent, it slows down my ability to advance my academic career, and I may no longer want to file the patent, because right now all my focus is on the academic career. So it's very important to have this active partnership. And then, of course, ideally, they would help in bringing capital in and making the connections to the venture side so that spin-outs can be jointly created. There are many steps that we have to go through in order to develop a drug. The initial idea or discovery happens here. Typically, we create data in cells, in the dish, in a tube, that's biochemistry. Eventually, if that thing works, we may want to test it in a mouse or a rat. Eventually, we test it in larger animals. And then it becomes seriously expensive, because at some point, you need to bring this to the FDA. The FDA is all about safety for patients. They will not let you take this idea into patients and potentially harm somebody. They will want you to create a very robust data package that costs millions of dollars to generate, and you need to test your drug in large animals, in sheep, in dogs, in monkeys, before you would subject a human to the risk. And so that's where the big cost comes in. But also, that's where the high value inflection happens. And so that's now an area that might attract venture capital investors. These things describe the clinical phases of testing. Phase 1 studies are typically done in healthy volunteers, often students who get paid, or in some cases, for example, if you do a cancer indication, you can go into cancer patients or rare conditions where there's no other hope available. Then in some cases, the FDA would allow you to do your phase 1 study in actual patients, which is attractive for the group developing the drug because they can get early readout if this thing is actually useful. Typically, we would do that in any other drug that's not treating a life-threatening condition. We would get that type of data during phase 2 studies when we treat the first set of patients, typically a couple dozen patients in these settings. And then phase 3 studies are the ones where we will have figured out the type of dosing that we want to apply, and we will have figured out the type of patient stratification, and we go into hundreds, sometimes thousands of patients. These cost many $1 million, these types of studies, right? And so this whole process will take you now more than 10 years. It's impossible to do it faster just because of the sequencing that has to happen. NDA is sort of one of the endpoints. New drug application is what you file with the FDA, and they would eventually grant you an approval if everything goes right. We've got sort of an image of this again. The stages from idea to the proof of concept data is really what academic environment is really good at. Later, you need a specialized team. You want to then own your IP and your patents. You need more data, and eventually you will want to file what we call an IND. IND stands for Investigational New Drug Application. That's a space, that's the moment in which the FDA may grant you permission to test this in humans, as we said. That's typically a good place for startups to cover and to take this idea over. That's really, this interface is really what we're talking about making smoother here. Then you generate clinical data, and the scale is not quite right, because this is where really the value increases can happen if things go well. If you get to show that this compound that you invented works in people, it improves symptoms in patients, then that's a massive value increase. That's much more valuable than showing that it works in a mouse, obviously. So the scale is not quite right, but that's really sort of the sequence of things as you develop your drug and your idea. Often, in the end, the exit is what the investor is looking for, because they want to get their money back, right? And they will sell this idea to a large pharmaceutical company, or they make it available to the public markets through an IPO. Now, the role of startups in all of this is, startups are not the right tool for any idea. Startups are the right tool for scalable ideas that can hit large markets. And why am I excited about doing this through the tool of startups and entrepreneurship? Well, because that gives you the ability to empower the most motivated set of people. Often the inventor is the person who knows this technology best, and it's their baby. They really have a stake in making it work and making it successful. So I believe that this distributed effort that we described earlier as sort of external innovation is best done in the hands of highly motivated, small teams that are able to take risk and iterate rapidly. Now at UVM, we want to apply this model, and you'll be in very good company. We are currently working with a lot of academic institutions already to help them streamline the process of tech transfer and entrepreneurial enablement. We have conducted together a study to see if this is going to be feasible in Burlington. And we found some very good things and some more challenging things about Burlington. People love to live here. The quality of life is better than it is in New York City or in Boston, at least for the people who prefer trees over concrete. And at the same time, there are real challenges that we have to address and be honest about, right? It's a limited market. You don't have yet an easy access to the diversity of talent that we described as being necessary. So we need to give those experts a reason to come here and to stay here, because having UVM as a place where many smart students come is a great opportunity to build that. You just need to retain a few more percentage of those people, keep them here so that they don't go elsewhere, and you will be able to build this. So let's see how this works. I'll show you, and we'll go through, I'm conscious of time, we'll go through a number of images so that you see what it is that we really do. The key to all of our facilities is a shared and open lab in which we have 20 or 30 or 40 benches in the lab that you can come in and do your science. These are fully equipped. They have all the access to the tools and machinery that you would otherwise have in an academic or in an industry lab, but you don't have to own it. You can rent a bench for a month, and it's side by side with your other peers. That leads to a lot of exchange between them so that they can meet each other and learn from each other. We also have private lab suites where you can grow your team from maybe 1 or 2 people that you may have had in the open lab to now a group of 5 or 10 people in a private lab. We also have private offices. You see we use a lot of glass. We are using design and architecture very proactively to shape behavior. We even think about the ways the corridors are shaped so that we can ultimately reach this thing that we describe as our mission's 2 things. We want to reduce friction and increase collisions. So we want to reduce friction in your workflow so that you don't have to lose time or efficiency waiting for something to be available. We have a copy of every machine that is used, and we have corridors in the lab that are optimized for your workflow. But we also want to increase collisions, and we do that through events like this, or networking events, or seminars, or lectures, so that people can meet each other. freezers, common spaces. We go through this quickly. If you visit any one of, has anyone visited one of our facilities? A few have, that's great. You probably saw a lot of color and you saw a lot of common shared spaces, which is not how a commercial real estate person would build these spaces because it's somewhat inefficient. You would call it inefficient. You can't make money on the generous cafe spaces or event spaces, but they do have an important role to play because that's where the connections happen, right? That's where the collisions are made possible. That's why we like that. We do a lot of operational support behind the scenes that you might not immediately think is important, but it is. For example, central purchasing and billing. If you are a startup, we know that you will have to buy chemicals, reagents, plastic, supplies from a number of vendors. Typically, our startups use a dozen to 2 to 20 different vendors. In the normal case, you would have to set up a vendor account with every one of them. They will ask you for your credit, and they will ask you to prepay, or they'll negotiate payment terms. And again, it's something that slows you down. You can get through it, but it's not efficient use of time. And so we have all of that. Also, we process now about $100 million of research supply orders every year. So you bet that we can get much better pricing than a small startup would get, and we can pass these savings on to our entrepreneurs. We mentioned the programming. We know that many of our founders are first-time founders, so they are really good experts in this one thing, in this gene, and this receptor, or in this cancer pathway that they work on. And they have a lot to learn in all of the other areas. HR, intellectual property, how to read a balance sheet, how to negotiate with an investor, how to protect their inventions in Brazil and in Europe and in Japan. And so we do a lot of that type of programming that gets them to be smarter. A quick few final slides to share with you our vision here at UVM. We have a site identified for an interim project in up here, not far, 2.5 miles at the Colchester Research Facility. This is the building that we're going to be in next to the Department of Health facility. We will have a little bit of lab space, open benches where people work side by side, and private labs for those companies that are growing and need a little more room for themselves, contained, and we have a little bit of office space. This is going to be a pilot that we run for 2 or 3 years. Please do use it. To the students out here, please come and use it, because if you use it well, we can make an argument that we need more space and that we need to come back on campus and that we need to be here. That's sort of the outlook that we have for the future. This is not something that we typically start and close. We set expectations that doing this will be a transformation, will result in a transformation of the culture at UVM. And let's measure it in 5 and in 10 years. How many startups will we have enabled? How many new ideas will have seen the light because this is there? Don't judge this in a year or 2. It'll take a little while. This is the timeline of our project together. We are hoping to launch pretty soon, in 6 months, early next year. We have a search going on right now for our site head. So if you know anybody who might be interested in this, they should come to our website and put in the application. It's moving fast. And here is sort of my wheel again. So now you see a little bit this world that we work in, right? And the environment that we're hoping to provide to innovators that are working at the cutting edge of research and whose ideas we want to make available to the world. Now, our ecosystem will include UVM, and we look forward to having you all up at the campus and doing great things together. Thank you very much for your time.
Another round of applause for Dr. Fruehauf. Probably 2 or 3 questions. Any burning questions?
Hi, my question is, of your leading compounds, how many are in phase 2? How many are in phase 1? Do you have anybody in phase 3?
Yeah, we do. So the question was, how of the clinical studies, how many are in phase 1, phase 2, or phase 3? I don't know the actual numbers. Of course, the bulk of the clinical trials are early stage clinical trials. We have like 250 studies going on. Most of them would be phase 1 studies. I know that there are 2 or 3 phase 3 studies, and the rest is, 1B or 2A studies. It's moving. It's getting there.
It's great because it does take 10 years to get all the way through that. So if
Absolutely.
you've only started when you started, it's pretty good progress. That's great.
Yep. Thank you.
Congratulations. This is so exciting.
Another question? Margaret?
Thank you very much, Dr. Fruehauf. That was fascinating. I'm a trauma surgeon and I don't do any of this, but I'm just thinking.
Maybe you should.
What does Biolab get out of this? Is what? So if I'm an entrepreneur, right, and I'm going to use your space. So what am I giving to you?
Yeah. So you are paying rent. In fact, in this case, most of the rent will go to UVM because UVM is hiring biolabs to do this for you,
I see.
right?
Mhm.
We are sort of a service provider to UVM. What do I get out of it? I'm excited about the things I see in the labs. And sometimes I get to invest in ideas. Biolabs, to be very clear, Biolabs doesn't require you to give up any of your equity or any of that, right? Like you start your company, you own your company, and hopefully you'll be super successful and we'll make you a millionaire. It's not our intention to take anything away from you. It's opportunity for us to get to know really good companies and really good ideas. And as I said, that's really why we created this venture capital fund, to eventually, support the ideas that we think are the best. In many cases, we miss good ideas. There are amazing, great companies in our labs that we didn't invest in, even those that pitched to us and we didn't see that they were great. So it happens all the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Well, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we have a class that needs to come in here. So are you sure? Okay, another question?
Oh, yeah. Did you have a question?
Dr. Fruehauf, just because this model has been successfully placed in many different places in many different countries, and obviously Germany and France, I think of how have you had to adopt the model slightly differently, and in what aspects have they been different in Europe versus in the United States?
So it's still early in our international development. So we opened both the first lab in France and Germany in the end of last year. So we only have sort of short experience there. And we're already seeing that, yes, we need to adapt the model to these different markets. And we are. So in a way, we can't be as demanding in the initial screen that I mentioned to you, how we let the companies in. We want to fill the places first, right? And then eventually we'll become more harsher in our judgment and maybe more selective. It's important for these spaces to have life and to be vibrant and to have an ongoing community. We also see that in many of these places, there's a lot more help needed in informing the scientists and the founders because they don't really have role models. When I mentioned to you, I came to Boston and knew very little about translation or entrepreneurship, but there were many role models to look at. There were many people, faculty, postdocs who also had startups going on the side. And I could chat with them and meet with them, and they used to be very generous in their advice. We are trying to build that especially in these ecosystems where there's less availability of role models like that. Yeah, thank you.
I enjoyed your talk very much. It's very informative. But if I'm a PhD and I find a drug that would be a cure of Alzheimer's or something like that, and who gets the patent? Does the university or do I get the patent?
Mm-hmm.
And
Good question. So it's a long process, right? A priori, if you discover this new receptor or this new protein that will interface with beta amyloid in the brain, and that is maybe a promising new cure for Alzheimer's, you discover it while you're a researcher at UVM, then the university will own that initial idea. Now, that's where tech transfer comes in. If you now want to go out and make something of this idea, you want to create a drug or a project with it, then you need to negotiate with your own university to get a license for this idea. The university will therefore get paid in some way for that license. They hopefully will have future royalties from when you sell this drug and you cure Alzheimer's. The university will get royalties from that. They will get milestone payments, and they will probably own some equity in your company. But eventually, you, the founder, also need to be motivated to take risk, to spend time. And if that's done well, it can be very motivating. And it can really drive a lot of entrepreneurial energy. And if it's done poorly, and that goes back to one of the slides that I had about technology transfer, it can be completely stifling and the idea will go nowhere. And unfortunately, I'm seeing that too often still.
So I, the inventor, need to negotiate with the university on the sale to Pfizer or some other company.
Not really. So you need to negotiate with the university about getting the license to this idea. And now you will start a company outside of the university. That company will take on its own life. It will raise money. It will build the development of the drug through the different stages that we discussed. And eventually the company will negotiate its own sale to Pfizer or BMS or some other entity. And there will be hopefully a large amount of money coming into this little company to pay off the investors, to reward the people who worked hard on the project, the innovator, and to also then give some money back to the university. And that's why it's so important for the university tech transfer office to play the long game, to be patient, and to enable many of their researchers to go out and venture, because it's very hard to predict which one of the many projects will be successful. You have to basically apply, as a university, a portfolio strategy to see many projects go, and one or two of them may be successful and pay back a large amount of money that will allow you to now support research and so forth. If it's done well, MGH in Boston is one of the most successful institutions. They have $100 million in royalties every year coming in. Wouldn't that be nice to have?
What a fantastic way to end up. Oh, thank you again, Johannes. 2 points. Later this afternoon at 2:30 in the Carpenter Auditorium, we'll be hosting a campus-wide event, panel discussion to launch the BioLabs initiative. So those of you who continue to have burning questions and interests, please join us at 2:30 in the Carpenter Auditorium. And right now, we'd like you to join us out in the reception area to celebrate Jack's 90th birthday. So please join us.
Thank you.